this is true of all the kind of less funded leagues. So that's true of women's football. It's true of lower league men's football. They're much more dependent on match day. Women's football, I mean, there is a TV contract which is decent. If you're a championship football club, without match day, without 25,000 people coming in and buying the tickets and the pies, you're nowhere. So TV without fans can work for the top level, can work for the Premier League, the Bundesliga. Below that, you really need people coming to the stadium.
Carly Telford, the fact that the men and the women are not exactly in sync when it comes to when to restart the season, again, is that an indicator that it's all about money?
Not all about, but it's a big chunk of it. I think that's been a lot of the decisions for most leagues across Spain, Italy, Germany, like you said before. It does come down to money, and at the end of the day, we are funded heavily by the men's team, and a lot of the clubs are. So for us to kind of just keep wanting the kind of men's league to just end, there is part of us that needs it to potentially go ahead just to keep us afloat as well as the other teams. So I think there's a big picture with it. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. The government rules are kind of changing, and if again we keep the R rate below a certain level, there's potential for the Premier League to go ahead, as long as it is to do safely. And again, we're funded by the FA as well, so have the FA got the money to be able to fund the testing, the amount of testing that is potentially going to be needed for it to go ahead, or is it going to be a detriment to our league for the future? We know how important money is going to be to keep the WSL afloat, and is spending a huge amount of money on testing and making sure everyone's safe the right thing to do at this moment in time. And that's questions that are being asked above my pay grade, and decisions that are having to be made in the next couple of weeks, I'd imagine. But yeah, we are in a position where I think safety comes first for us. We aren't kind of trying to fulfill massive multi-million-pound sponsorship deals that the Premier League, the Spanish League, the Italian League are trying to fulfill to make sure that their league and their teams can stay afloat.
It's got to be heartbreaking on so many levels for you, Carly, because when you look back to last year's World Cup, the women's game has gone from strength to strength. It's more and more televised here in France. I know it's the same where you are. More and more people taking interest, more and more girls playing football in Europe. And now this stoppage and the money issues that Simon Kuper just described, you wonder, is it going to be back to square one?
Yeah, Simon makes a great point, and it's probably only recently over the past couple of interviews that I've done that people have said, "Oh, do you think the women's game is going to be affected because of the men's game?" And that's probably made me think for the first time, well, actually, yeah, like we might, if the men are going to have to take pay cuts in their salaries and their transfer fees, then it is directly going to affect the women's game. I just hope that it doesn't massively. We managed to kind of, I know the team at Chelsea were working on individual and separate sponsorship deals away from the men, just because we're at that point where Chelsea have become such a global brand, and women's game is now watched across the world, that we have that opportunity, and hopefully that won't deter, I guess, sponsors still wanting to invest in the women's game. But look, there's also opportunity. If there's going to be a lot more games behind closed doors, is there more opportunity for TV rights investments to have more games televised, which would be an amazing thing. And yeah, for the first time, we actually were selling out crowds mostly every week, 3,000-4,000 people at Kings Meadow, which is unbelievable. And I think our marketing team was saying that we don't give away any free tickets anymore, which is a huge leap. And the fact that might get all taken away, all that hard work, will be a bit of a pill to swallow. But again, the safety comes first of not only us as players, but the fans who are coming to the grounds. But yeah, it's just finding ways. Like most clubs and most kind of businesses, they're going to have to find a different way of doing things if they want to kind of make money and stay afloat. It's not just football.
And following up on that point with you, Ian Holyman, when they decided to cancel the French league, the outspoken owner of Lyon's football club, which on the women's side is a major powerhouse in Europe, he said, well, because his team didn't qualify for next year's Champions League, said, well, the revenue loss, that's going to be bad for everybody, including the women, he said.
Absolutely. It's very interesting to hear what Carly said. I mean, here in France, women's football has been a relatively big player on the European scene for quite some time, with the likes of Jean-Michel Aulas at Lyon, who's made them into a real European powerhouse. You've got Paris Saint-Germain coming as well. Crowds this season were up 30%, and there's no doubt that that is a knock-on effect from last summer's World Cup. I think that interest will actually stay, and of course the women's team are to a certain extent reliant on the money filtering down through the men's team, as Carly described, and 17 of the current 20 Ligue 1 clubs now have a professional women's team, which is already a step forward. Just 3 teams then without a professional women's side now in the elite league in France, which is a huge step forward. I think, and as well at the grassroots level, I think that interest will still stay.